Welcome to Nacht Waffen Pilot with Penny Bradley. And today we are blessed to have Michael Lee Hill with us. Michael Lee Hill gave me a bio, and it's cool, and I'm going to read it. Michael Lee Hill is an award-winning musician, filmographer, and UFO experiencer. His footage of the Lake Erie UFOs has created a Billy Meier-like buzz, and Michael seems to have developed an intuitive relationship with these craft. In his home state of Ohio, Michael has been cataloging video after video of UFOs over Lake Erie. The phenomena consists almost entirely of pulsating orbs of light. Unusual lights seen changing colors, converging and separating over the lake. Stories of the unexplained phenomena date back over 150 years to the indigenous North American Indian tribes. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me again.
Yeah, we had a chat almost a year ago before I was on Global Enlightenment Radio Network. And that went about an hour and a half, and that was a lot of fun. So I'm glad you're back.
I'm glad to be back.
So it's always nice to have friends on that I've met real world. And yes, we know each other.
Yes, indeed.
So
it's nice to actually, like you said, you know, I do a lot of interviews, but there's not many people I've met in person, and it was a pleasure to meet you in person.
Well, thank you. I had the pleasure of meeting your lady Sarah, and she's an incredible person, and
I think so too.
she has a story in her own right, and maybe one of these times we'll get her on.
Yes, indeed. She is shy, but you never know.
She wasn't shy about hugging at conferences, but for the audience, that this was before the bug. So
yes.
Well, Michael has a story from, I'm going to say 2011 approximately. Where
it started actually about 2008 is when I was brought into AR Bordon's fold.
Yeah. So this is his connection to my community. And the people who are out there wondering, why is this rock star on Penny's disclosure show? Well, it's because he's a fractal incarnation of an ET that we know on Earth as Anunnaki. And these beings have been here for a long time and have been, I'm going to call them partial incarnations, because if any one of them came into a human body, it would fry mama and the baby.
Yes, yes.
So generally there's more than one body that this being has incarnated into. That doesn't mean that they're not individual people in their own right. And so Michael is one of the incarnations of Enki. And that's where his story starts, is when he started making connection with Enki, and other humans noticed it. I got that right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, that was in 2008. I ended up being featured on the History Channel on UFO Hunters. It was season 1, episode Alien Contact. And in that, You know, some of my footage that I filmed of these craft over Lake Erie went viral. And that brought the History Channel to my door, but they ended up asking me if I would be willing to fly to Boston to have an update to my story. And I didn't know what they were flying me there for, but it was to have my blood work and medical work done because they had interviewed another contactee. His name was Terrell Copeland, and he was a Marine. And he had filmed the exact same orbs of light, chariots of fire craft as I had the same story of contact and actually the same bed of spiritual information. I guess now people would call it the law of attraction, you know,
Okay.
thoughts create reality, bed of info. But they thought, wow, this is weird because Terrell, because he was a Marine, had a thorough medical blood work test done, and they found he had a blood anomaly that none of the best military doctors or civilian doctors could figure out what was going on. So the History Channel smartly didn't tell me that they were going to have my blood work done because I probably would have said no. I am a baby and I don't like needles. But anyhow.
Oh, well, this is, I don't know if you can see it on here, but I've got a bruise right now from blood work 3 weeks ago.
You poor thing. Well, you know what I'm talking about. They're no fun whatsoever. I don't like them, but when I got to Boston, I realized that's what I was there for. And they had flown in Terrell as well and took us both to have our blood work done by a Harvard professor. His name was David Systrom. So in that show is when it aired in March of 2008, by the way. And at the end of the show, they said, yeah, you have the same blood anomaly, and sent me on my way. And I thought it was kind of weird because at that point, I'm not part of a show. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? I have a blood anomaly. Like, is there something I should be worried about? And the guy was kind of a dick about it. He's like, what do you think unknown means?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. And he said he said if he had to guess, it was some type of virus that's not known to mankind that was making my body release these massive amounts of creatine kinase into my bloodstream. Just in a nutshell, the normal amounts of that enzyme is 25 parts per liter of blood. And what they found in mine was 2,100 versus 25. And the reason creatine kinase is released into the bloodstream is to facilitate healing. It brings oxygen into the bloodstream. So if you've had a normal bloodline, if you've had a heart attack or muscle damage, you ripped a muscle, your creatine kinase levels can increase to about 250 to about 300 tops because it's bringing extra energy, you know, via oxygen into the bloodstream. And yeah, they just sent me home. I was like, wait a minute, man, this is getting a little weird. And they didn't have any answers.
Did they ever tell you what else creatine kinase does?
I found out more because of being brought in by AR Bordon. But you might know something on it. I don't know because there's not a whole lot of information on it. What do you know about it?
I was a microbiology major in college back in 82. And what I know about it is that it is one of the things that powers ATP, which is what actually produces energy in your cell. And that if you have a lot of it, that you'll give off photons. And so that's why some of the people in the Anunnaki community will literally glow in the dark.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting bit of information. You know, I'm shy by nature. And even though I'm a musician, I've always fancied myself more of a Keith than a Mick, you know? Being out in front of people I don't like it. I like being on the back of the stage with a guitar. I'm happy. But, you know, God laughs when you make plans.
Oh,
And
yes, yeah.
so, yeah, you know, what are you going to do? God throws you a softball and you got to swing. But I'm at one of the Serpent Mound ceremonies with the Native American First Nations, and they allow us to physically get on the mound to do ceremony.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, it's quite different. And so we're doing ceremony, and the easiest way is just picture a big circle and say there's, I don't know, 80 people in that circle. At the end of the ceremony, you kind of break off and everyone goes around the circle and everyone shakes hands, you know, just everyone. So every single person that walked up to me, they're like, you know, not shake their hand. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And the next person will walk up and they'd be like, you know, they really look so like scared, you know. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I don't understand. So finally, after about this happens 5 or 6 times, this lady goes, do you know you're glowing? You know, I didn't have my hair colored at that time. It's gray and the moon was out. And I guess I was just a big glowing mess of light to the point that it was kind of freaking people out. So here I thought I was invisible. Not so much.
Oh, no. This stuff just, it sends out photons from every cell in your body. And
well, I can tell you,
when I met you at a conference in October 2018, you were hiding in the dark in the bar, and I came and talked to you, and I didn't tell you, but you were like glow in the dark, and I'm sort of okay, I know. I know what you are.
Yeah, you know, when you want to fit in, it doesn't work real well. You know, I've been having it recently even worse because, you know, we can get into this, but the Native American Indian elders, what would you want to call it? Vetted me or released that I was rainbow, which means all it means is, she goes, you know, you are the rainbow we've been waiting for. She said all of the human chakras emit light, but only when they're clean and balanced. That and it's the colors of the rainbow, from red in the root to purple in the crown, and all their chakras get all the other colors of the rainbow. She said, to those of us that have the gift of sight, you've become the whirling rainbow. That's interesting because there is a whirling rainbow warrior prophecy, which was the name they gave me. But recently, I've just had people sit down next to me and they're like, dude, you have like colors coming all off of you. I'm like, oh, shit. I guess not so invisible after all.
No. When you went to hide in the dark, and the powers that be don't like that, you're going to start to glow, and you have been the whole time I've known you. So,
well, thank you. I think it's unintentional. I'll tell you, you know, when I also did a show for Spike TV, and it's not been allowed to air because of national security issues, I guess. Yeah, 9 months I worked with Spike TV in 2012, and it's still not been allowed to air still to this date. But there's a reason. I was telling you that. Oh yeah, I can. You know, I learned a lot from doing it. I allowed myself. They had 2 hosts. One was an actual New York detective, and the other one was a trained Army Ranger who was a psychiatrist, psychologist, and hypnosis. And he was like in charge. And first of all, I'm not real happy with people poking around in my head. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I just assume they stayed out.
Yeah, but what put me at ease with this gentleman is that he was Robert Thurman's like best friend, and was very instrumental in bringing Tibetan Buddhism into the Western culture. And I noticed he had a Tibetan prayer bracelet, you know.
Okay.
So, but, you know, I allowed, when I got to Boston to film for that TV show, I didn't know it, but here they had the head of the New York Police Department waiting on me for a lie detector test. I was like, oh,
gee.
great.
I've never had a lie detector test. Is it frustrating?
You know, it was a little bit frustrating because when I was filming for them, they're like, when did this first event happen down at the lake? And I was like, man, I don't know. I went down there every day. You know what I mean? What,
Yeah.
I wasn't taking, you know, a calendar and write down this happened on this date. They're like, well, people are going to want to know, you know, what the date was. Just make something up. So I was like, well, that sounds fucking shady. Excuse my language.
Yeah, it does. It
But
does
you know,
sound shady.
I was learning, and so I just made up a date. I thought, well, I know it was in the summer because you're not going down there in the winter in Ohio, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even remember what I told them, but like July 18th, you know. So I
Yeah.
get down to Boston, and they're there to do a lie detector test, and they're like, so was this date accurate when you were down there? And I was like, really? You know, this is how they're gonna prove me. But I passed
Yeah.
that question. I think maybe out of my subconscious, I just pulled the right date, so it came out accurate. But out of 10 questions, I passed everything with flying colors. The only question I didn't answer was, you know, I've only been awakened during a procedure one time in my life, and truly, I regained full consciousness in a chair with my legs spread apart, like a
Ooh.
woman, like, and it was not pleasant. There was little tiny wires that seemed to be animated, and they were coming up and they were going right under my man junk up into my body, and it was excruciating painful. And right when one would enter, another one would go up and enter, and another one would go up and enter. I'm like, whoa, I'm awake, man. Stop doing what you're doing. And so I answered the question that I awoke in the chair, and they found out that wasn't accurate. And then some more memories flooded back, and I said, you know what? It's actually correct. I regained consciousness being drugged to the chair. Two people on either side were dragging me to that chair. The thing is, though, what's that?
Were they people?
Yes, they look very, very much like people, but it looked very, very human, hospitalish looking. But I remember these people like just were impervious to my screams of like, it's like they had no functioning emotional body or something. They just were impervious to my pleads to please stop. But there was this being I'd never seen.
The folks in the Black Ops I was part of tend to not have a functioning emotional body.
Ah.
It's something we have to relearn once we're brought back.
Well, that would make sense because
that explains a lot of the weird comments I make on your wall. So yeah, I've had to do the work to regain an emotional life.
You know, the thing that saves this experiment, not experiment, maybe experience, is that there was another being that was in my blind spot, and this voice said, oh, we're sorry, we didn't know you're awake. You won't feel any more pain. And he put his hand over my third eye, over my forehead, and I lost consciousness, and I never felt any more pain. And there was compassion in his voice that like, we're so sorry, we didn't know that you were conscious. And so, you know, I don't even look at the experience as negative, even though it's very painful. You know, if you're having a surgery and you've signed up for it, you know it's for your benefit, you still don't want to wake up in the middle of it. You know, that's all to me, it just seemed that I woke up in the middle of something because I heard, you know, this experiment to adjust our genetics didn't end. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's an ongoing thing. And a matter of fact, we can get into haplogroup X2A, which is the giant skeletal remains that have been removed out of mound builder sites. And it traces back to the hills of Galilee. It is the Nephilim bloodline on this planet. But, you know, I'm haplogroup X2A. And a few generations ago, we had giant stature, you know, 16 feet tall skeletons have been removed.
Great grandmother was 6'2", and her mother had been Creek, which is one of the tribes of the mound builders, the southern end. Yes. So I'm pretty sure that she was from that. But proving it now that she's been dead for decades is a little difficult. And women don't have the haplogroups. That only goes with the Y DNA.
Gotcha. You know, it's an interesting talking point to me because, you know, scientifically, even with DNA science, that this DNA type had giant stature not that long ago. But now we're not. They just made me shorter and fatter, I think.
They just shrunk us down the same size as everybody else.
Yeah.
I do have a full brother that I've been trying to talk him into doing the Y DNA for us. And I did mine, but it just said that I was Scythian. So,
you know, what's weird about that is a lot of people, even though, you know, that bloodline intertwined into the Native American Indian cultures, pretty much all the tribes. But it's not Native American. It's way older than that, and it's Atlantean, truly. So a lot of people have their blood work done, and it comes up that they're not Native American. And, it's like all of a sudden, if one of those Atlanteans went into the Chinese culture and had their DNA done, it's not going to say Chinese. But
it was really interesting because I know from doing my family tree that there are at least 20 moms along the way who were Native. I know they were Native, and I don't have their Native name. I only have their Elizabeth or Jenny or Mary that their husband called them. But I know they were Native. And so I looked at my DNA results and I was like, why was there 1% Native American? Because it should be closer to 20%.
Gotcha. Well, that very well could explain it.
Yeah. Because they did say, what was it they called it? Western hunter-gatherers, which is the code word for Scythian, and Eastern planter groups, which is the code word for Parthia. So you know where those places are. Parthia is basically the same as the X area in the Middle East.
Gotcha.
So, you know, it's saying I'm from there. Which is consistent completely with what you are saying about the source of the Native American tribes.
Well, some of them, like from what I understand, the largest percentage of the Atlantean bloodline resides within the Iroquois tribe. And they know they got it at around 3%. It could be much higher because just the fact that not a lot of Native American First Nations have had their blood work done, right?
Yeah.
But at least
I don't blame them for not wanting to get needles.
No. It's maybe that's a trait among us all. I was like, no, thank you for the needle thing. But it's interesting because this is all going to be revealed in the very near future. The Anunnaki have told me, you know, if the whole point of all this, first of all, is to help create rainbows, right?
Yeah.
To give humans the spiritual technology to clean their own chakra systems. And every single person is going to have their own journey and their own darkness that is, dimming their shine and whatever. And what they told me is that up until you've been deemed rainbow, which the Tibetan monks have the exact same idea. They call it the rainbow body. And even the Mormons, they call it the coat of many colors. It's truly, it's all your chakras. But in the Christian, the breaking of the seven seals, it's the exact same thing. It's the seven chakras. And truly what they told me is, let's say you got 6 of your 7 chakras clean and they're glowing, but your 7th, let's just say it's your root chakra, is still dark. And you're experiencing all kinds of problems in your life of keeping a roof over your head and abundance and, root chakra symptoms.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, if you're given all this extra manifestation or LERM ability, LERM is the AR Bordon light encoded reality matrix, to able to, bring in other realities. But anyhow, if all of a sudden you're given all this extra manifestation ability, but your root chakra is still dark, more than likely you're just going to go and manifest what you still have a fear stamp on and manifest the crap out of it. And it's not going to end well. That's not. So they said spirit is smarter than that no extra manifestation ability is ever granted unless spirit has vetted you and said, okay, clean chakras. So I think that's interesting, because I think the whole idea of becoming rainbow, it's all inclusive, no one's excluded. It doesn't matter whether you're man, female, child, whatever race, everyone can become rainbow.
It doesn't matter what your bloodline is. It's
No.
a matter of doing the work.
Yeah, that's what Sarah always says. You got to swim the moat. That's one thing I hear a lot of people talking about, instant enlightenment. Like you walk into this room full of organite and you walk out and you're all enlightened. I'm like, I don't think so. You got to swim the moat. No one can do it for us,
For me, it has been, I have been picked up and plopped into a situation, kicking and screaming, and figuring out how to get myself out of that situation brought me to the next level, that they picked me up and plopped me into something else. And it's been distinct times. And about every 4 years, I go through a dark night of the soul. This is not an easy thing for people to cope with. You don't.
No, it takes a lot of people out.
You don't get to rainbow by being, sorry guys, you don't get to be rainbow by being completely love and light and a pussy about it. You have to do the work.
That's true. So true. Chief Blue Star Eagle, who was part of my naming ceremony, he said, your name is Rainbow Warrior, but is granted to you by the Eagle Nation. That's Enlil's side. So cool. This makes sense that when Enlil's side vets you and grants you Eagle status, which to them is Rainbow status. Rainbow and Eagle is one and the same. It's the eagle is the only bird that flies above the storm and doesn't cower beneath it and gets the bird's eye view of everything. But he said, the Eagle Nation has granted you your gift of your spiritual and Native American First Nation name, which is Rainbow Warrior. And he said, now when you pray under that name, your prayers will go to Creator with great enthusiasm. So, but think of this, I'm Serpent Clan. That's Inky's, what we're known under, and the Stag Clan as well, which is the deer. Those are the two clans that are truly the Inky clan on this planet. But if you're Serpent Clan and you've been vetted Eagle status, isn't that the plumed serpent? See what I'm saying?
It would seem to me it would be, yes.
Yes, it is. So it's the whole point of, because if you're vetted by the Eagle Nation, by Enlil, by Yahweh, there's two sides. There's one, some would call them dark. I call them Team Bad Cop. But their spiritual role, they understand energy thought forms have energy.
Mm-hmm.
And energy can't be created or destroyed. It needs to be transmuted into a higher octave, hopefully. But how do you transmute a negative thought form? Well, you live it. It comes up in your own personal reality. And if you can choose love over fear, then you can transmute those energies. If not, the same shit just keeps happening over and over and over again in your reality. And you keep asking, why does these exact same events keep happening to me? It's different people, but it's the same words coming out of their mouth, and I'm being treated the same. It's because that energy has not been transmuted. So it's like Team Bad Cop's spiritual role. And that way of looking at it is actually beneficial, because they will give you the opportunity to experience your own negative thought forms up close and personal. And hopefully you'll choose no. But what they said was this Team Bad Cop is going to see, they're going to dangle dark carrots in front of you and see if they can get you to bite, because their job is to see anyone that gives their I am and their energy away to illusionary outside sources. You're not ready for higher realms where thoughts are manifest instantly. So that's their job. But then if this is all about self-inflicted suffering through one's own free will, that's what Chief Yahweh told me. And I'm not, this is in the flesh, by the way. I'm sitting right next to him at a ceremony.
Audience. For the audience, we are talking about human beings, human bodies that are partial fractal incarnations of these people and are used as point of contact for the higher being to speak and operate through.
Yes, mostly this meeting the council, because if there's a dark council that is getting to see if they can get you to take the dark carrot and give your energy away to an illusionary outside source, and particularly he said self-inflicted suffering through one's own free will. Team Light is going to see how much love and compassion you bring to any suffering that comes your way. And it's in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean, they call this the Halls of Amenti. And in the Halls of Amenti, it's certain times of the year and it's certain power locations where ley lines cross and create vortexes of energy. At these certain times, no longer is, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th dimensional beings in the 9th, 10th, or, 11th or 12th dimension. They're right there with you in the third dimension. Everything is intermingled. And at these ceremonies is when certain initiates, from what I understand, there's not one single person that won't be brought before this council, and they'll see if you're a clean vessel. Both light and dark will see how much love and compassion you bring in any suffering that comes your way, and the other side is going to see what kind of suffering you'll allow through your own free will because you're believing in bullshit.
Yeah, that's perfect way of putting it, because you're believing in bullshit, and there's an amazing amount of bullshit out there to believe in.
Yeah, and they're good at gift wrapping it,
Yeah, they are.
Whatever, for each person, they know what scares you, and it's almost unfair because it is, with some of the people I met of the Native American Indian culture, they have suffered tremendously at the hand of Team Bad Cop and made them, know the story. The worst genocide on this planet ever.
It was the worst genocide ever, and there are not many that would be even close.
No. So the Halls of Amenti at this, from what I understand, every single one of us at our passing, when we, we're done with our time here, where we would have met this council. But some of us are brought before the council beforehand, and that's what happened. And I did pass the test, but
that's a good way of putting it. You're brought before the council early, and I'm glad you passed the test.
It's really interesting because sometimes I wonder, Did I really? Because I needed help. And it was one of the grandmothers that intervened and actually almost tackled me because I was, you know, the head of the seven lords of darkness, as it's called in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. He'd come to me the night before and he said, I had this dream and it had everything to do with you. And if a dream is confirmed in reality, it's reenacted at our ceremony. And so we're going to be reenacting it tomorrow. I was like, what? You know, what are you talking about? And he said, I can't tell you because it would take away from the energy. Well, after all of this, what I found out is
Oh, so he's going to mess with your head by teasing you about it.
Yeah. And
yeah,
truly what had happened was in this dream, I had a friend who was, you know, dancing for the first time. And because of the heat and the exhaustion, he had passed out in my dream. And that's what brought me into their circle to save him, you know, throw him over my shoulder and take him to a hospital. Well, the next day they went up to a friend of mine, truly, that was dancing for the first time and asked him if he'd fake passing out.
Oh,
they recreated this dark one's dream that he had about me, and it almost worked, man. I had already found out this isn't what people think it is, and I not on my watch am I going to watch a friend of mine lay there. And then what really took me back was when the ones that were participating took him and drug him to a tree and was going to tie him to the tree. I stood up. I don't want to keep swearing, but it is what it is. I was like, I'll tear this effing place apart, you know?
On our network, we don't censor legitimate emotional.
Oh, right on. Good. Because I cuss like a...
you have met me real world, and you know I cuss like a sailor.
Sometimes you gotta, you know, you can't contain
Sometimes there's no other way to express it.
Well, I'll tell you what happened is, you know, I stood up and I said, you know, I will tear this fucking place apart. And I was going in, and one of the grandmothers almost tackled me, and she said, here, drink for him. And I had learned at the ceremony, like, people are going without water for 4 days. So the idea is to give them sustenance. Every time you take a drink of water, you mentally send them water, you know? So she handed me this big glass of lemon water, and I got it and I drank it. And then she handed me another one. Truly, she was just running interference to keep me from going in. After the second cup of lemon water, I was still entering their territory. My friend I thought he was still on the ground. Well, by the time I got there, he was back up dancing. Think about this though. They had tricked me. I was responding to total illusion.
Yeah.
He was never in harm's way. They're very good at making things appear as what they're not.
Yeah.
And to get you to respond out of emotion. And really what the Chief Yahweh had told me is he said, you know, the trickiest way they get you to enter their territory is through love and compassion. He said, it's truly like coming across someone drowning in quicksand. And your initial thought is the way to help them is jump in the quicksand with them. Well, that doesn't help them and it doesn't help you. You just end up with two people in quicksand. The only way to help is to stand on solid ground and reach out a helping hand.
I've had to learn that in my own walk, because when I first came public, I was coming from a place of I was doing peer counseling with people. And I had to find out, and it nearly destroyed me, because so many people were just sucking my energy and there was nothing left to do the work with. And I had to learn to say no and put up shielding so they literally cannot get in.
Right on. What method do you use, by the way? I learned the egg of light, golden light. So I'm wondering what you use.
What I've been using is mirrored shielding, and it's a technique that I was taught in the Black Op, and it's You have the innermost one is a pyramid because it is the most stable 3D form. And then you form other forms around it, and you have at least 3 layers, all of them mirrored on the outside. So that if they do get through everything else, because I have basically it's a tornado around the shielding. So if they get through that, then if they see what they think is me, all they're seeing is their own reflection in the mirrors. And it keeps out 98% of people. The 2% that can get in would be able to walk in no matter what I put up, because they're just stronger than I am. And that's something that people need to keep in mind. No matter how good you are, there's always somebody better. Always.
A lot of this too, you know, I was told, you know, what you say no to is a direct reflection of the yes that then can come, and can only come unless you set the boundary of going, no, I don't accept that kind of behavior towards me or others. You know, we're all social creatures and we want to belong. So sometimes it's hard to go, no, you know, but once you do that, but you know what, I got to say, I was getting really good at saying no, when especially then who people I considered friends were being very disrespectful. And I would be like, hey, there's the door, man. And but then I'm like, wow, I don't want to just be friendless. You know what I mean? So I went to the
I've been going through that on Facebook because I reached a point where I'm no longer the new kid. And what the new kids are saying is directly opposed to what I've been saying all along. And so I'm the established person that they're bouncing off of. And it would be really easy for me to just say, look, you're right, bye, you know, and just leave. And I nearly did that recently. And my producer, his mother used to work at the CIA. And she was the data entry clerk that uploaded my file. She put her own life at risk to verify my story, to keep me talking, because I was going to quit. I had reached the point where I was so drained that I no longer gave a shit. Nobody was listening. I was just entertainment, and nobody cared that my story is about kidnapped children being used as slave labor. That's all I have cared about the whole time, was getting that stopped. And they've gotten so caught up in the details of who's fighting who where and for what reason that they've completely lost sight of children are being kidnapped and used as slave labor for the rest of their lives. And I figured, come on, nobody's taking me seriously. I don't matter. And so this sweet woman in her 80s came forward and said, well, I did the data entry on your packet. You're telling the truth. The rest of them are not.
Well,
and it was like,
bless you. It's
oh
hard to stand up against. It seems like the more, you know, we awaken, it's like a lot of people around us become the wardens of this mind prison. And it's not easy, you know, because like I said, we're all social and we want to be liked. We want to get along. So it's not the easiest thing. And matter of fact, AR Bordon had told me, he said, the most difficult thing for the human mind is to know something to be a fact and that this is reality, but that reality is not reflected by your friends, your parents, your peers, you know.
Exactly.
It's very, very difficult for the human mind to exist when you're the first that's breaking through.
Exactly. And I have been at that point where I'm not the new kid, and people have this idea of what's going on in space, and I'm telling a different story. And so it's like, there's got to be something wrong with what I'm saying. And I'm getting flack all the time. And I got to where it was like every time someone came up with something, it was like a personal assault.
Yeah.
And when you're like that, you don't want to be there anymore. And I've had comments that I've put on my wall saying, if you don't like this, you know where the unfriend button is.
Yeah.
And it's not that I want them to unfriend me, it's that I'm tired of being hassled all the time.
I totally understand. The only place that I draw a line is if there's disrespect, disrespect towards me, or even more particular about others. That they say
Yeah.
something and someone becomes disrespectful. I've had
I
to,
have seen you. If someone disrespects Sarah, the fire flashes from the eyes.
yeah, yeah. No one wants the horns.
Yeah, no one wants to see the fire flashing. But, it was just to the point where, people were making up shit about me. And I was like, no more. I'm done. And then Doris came forward and put her own life on the line to keep me here. So,
I'm glad you're still here. And, it's a very funny, it's not funny at all, but the whole, like, what is wrong with us humans? Where, I mean, I'm sure you just seen in Canada, they just found, close to 300 children's bodies.
New ones,
That,
yeah. On top of the ones that they had found before.
Yeah, and it's all throughout our history of children being abused by what is supposed to be their caretakers, and I don't know. Sometimes I just wonder what the hell's wrong with us. I don't have the answer.
I have wondered that my whole life. What the hell is wrong with humanity? That we can be so cruel to our own.
Sometimes, it's not a popular opinion, but I think the veil of civilization, of us being civilized, is very thin. And we're not that far above our primate kin. And if you look at even chimpanzees, or they're vicious.
Yeah,
they are. Yeah.
People
and I think
that chimps are sweet, but no, they go to war with other chimp families, and they bite and scratch and use rocks,
rip and tear. Yeah, I don't claim to understand it. As a matter of fact, sometimes recently, I've almost got to the point where I lost faith in humanity, and I was shown, one thing just recently is I didn't understand the support of hatred. I'll just leave it at that. And it brought me down. And then I started to realize there's mind control being used, through media and through flashing of lights and repeating of words 3 times. That some people are not susceptible to that, but a lot of people are. And I realized, don't give up on them. They're just easily hypnotizable. It's not, I don't want to say it's not their fault, because they're accepting that dark carrot. And even though something has entrained them into a state of consciousness that makes them more susceptible to suggestion, they still have to allow it in. But it did give me
I see it a little from a more like anthropology view, that when cultures, when there were not as many people and you had a small group and you had a stranger come in, most of the time that stranger carried diseases that your group had not been exposed to.
Mm.
And so this was a real threat. The trouble is we still have that instinct, even though there are so many of us.
That's a good point. You know, once you understand thoughts do create reality, and then you look at the xenophobia and prejudice that we exhibit as humans, and when you point that out to our star brothers and sisters, how how do you think it's going to manifest? You know what I mean? It can't manifest as anything pleasant.
You know about the Ponti, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Ponti came and visited me for a while. Really nice people. And they were talking to me about they wanted to interact with average humans. And I showed them memories I had of average humans. And they were mortified. And I said, and if this is the way we treat each other, how are we going to treat you? And they came up with that they were going to have to think about who they would interact with. And they came up with extra protocols about right-mindedness. So if you are not in a right-minded category, they're not going to risk their own lives interacting with you. And that was something they really needed to understand, because they were coming from a really naive point of view. And gotta love them, they were sweet about it. But I didn't want them to get hurt.
Yeah, right. Do you really know what you're asking for?
Yeah. I put it in terms of, okay, you're going to show up with a ship and you are going to hover for a little while and then land. And what are you going to do when Billy Bob shows up in his pickup truck with 3 shotguns? You know, how are you going to protect yourself from shotgun shells? You know, this is a real question you need to consider. And they were like, oh, we hadn't thought of that. Okay. And I use the term Billy Bob because that's my culture. I come from Central California, where most of the white people came from the Dust Bowl. And so they still have that border South mentality. And yeah, you show up here with a spaceship and hover for a little while and then land, you're going to be greeted with a shotgun. And almost every house has one. I mean, I posted on my wall about the neighbor a block away celebrating holidays by shooting his shotgun into the ground. At least he's not shooting it into the air for it to fall on him.
Yeah, we get a lot of that here in Florida.
Yeah, same mentality.
Yes, indeed. You know what's interesting? Oh, that's our dog Beans.
I have a couple of cats, but we used to have a dog. She was 25 when she died. It was like losing a child. And
yeah, they become family, don't they?
And Lou said, I don't want any more pets. So he got adopted by a mama cat.
Yeah, we have a cat and a dog right now. But you know, this is a little weird because it sounds self-serving because I'm a musician, but I'm sure you know Grant Cameron. And
yeah, I've met him.
I'm
not sure he remembers me, but that's okay. He was a very pleasant person.
Yeah, he's nice. And, you know, he wrote a book about musicians that had contact. And that's because I work with Michael Luckman, who wrote Alien Rock. and it was a book published by VH1. And it was a whole book of everyone from Elvis to Sammy Hagar to, John Lennon. The list just goes on of all these musicians who had contact. Grant was really funny about it. He's like, because he knows about the 432 subject, but not a lot. He's not a musician. So one day he's like, I want you to teach me about 432, but like I'm a kindergartner because I don't know what you're talking about whatsoever. So, but I really like that about Grant, of being able to learn, But here's the deal is, because of working with these two people, Michael Luckman and Grant Cameron, why do musicians have such a higher rate of contact than the normal person? And really what it came down to, they think, is it's been proven that there's only two things that truly make both hemispheres of our brain lock and load. The creative feminine side and the analytical engineering male side. And that's music and meditation. And it very well could be why school systems have been taking out music from their curriculums, because, when a child learns music from a very early age, when they go out into the real world, those two hemispheres are not severed. They're actually perceiving their reality with a full brain. And if you're not meditating, or you're not a musician, and I know it sounds derogatory, but you're half-brained, that you either look at your reality through, a more intuitive, nurturing side, or you'll look at it through the analytical, engineering side. Truly, you need both, right?
I tend to do the analytical engineering side because that was what I used in the Black Ops.
Mm-hmm.
And my abilities are more on the intuitive side, but I've had an MRI done, and there's almost an inch between the two hemispheres of my brain. And that's consistent with me being spun in a centrifuge to prevent me reintegrating alters. So the fact that I've reintegrated 32 alters anyway shows what kind of work I've put into it.
Right on.
So, and with the reintegrated alters come the memories, which is why I'm able to talk about more things as I go, because I'm putting in the work.
Gotta swim the moat.
Exactly. We're a little bit over halfway through our allotted time. So I wanted to make sure that we talked about your time with AR Bordon.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to give us about 15, 20 minutes of that.
Right
and
on.
then we can talk about your new musica.
Right on. It's all intertwined, actually.
I know it is.
Yeah, I'm very proud that all of the learning culminated just recently into a new piece of music that incorporated everything I learned about cosmic harmonious frequencies, and actually putting it to music. But starting with AR Bordon, which it's interesting. By all means, if you ask me, do I believe he's 15 of the Wingmakers? I would answer yes. And I have a lot of information to back that up. I wouldn't just say that. Okay. But being part of, well, not only that, the group that I was brought into, I ended up interviewing AR Bordon, and I interviewed Mark Hempel and Darlene Sturgis. Sturgis? Mm-hmm. But it's all Wingmakers folk. And the conversations I even had with AR, he said, who you're come into our fold is the ACIO. But he said the ACIO is the Alien Contact Interface Organization, very secretive division of the NSA. And it also houses the NSA remote viewers and reverse engineering, because they found out to work with extraterrestrial races whose main form of communication is telepathic. Well, you need those skills, you know?
Yeah, if you don't have those skills, you're lost.
Yeah, they call it topological thinking, and it's able to start to understand that these beings can speak through synchronicity and coincidence multidimensionally through your life. So you need to, like, some things that you're given a nugget of info maybe 10 years ago. Now, yesterday, you go, oh, that's what they meant, you know? So being aware of that, they call it topological thinking. But what had happened was I became pretty much enamored with the Wingmaker's bit of information. And to the point where I read what's called the Dr. Neruda interviews. And I mean, I was serious about it. I had a pen and paper, and anytime a name was given, I went and researched that name. And sure enough, it's all real. They're the real. Yeah, it's like they put it right out there in people's faces, even to the point that they asked, well, is there any of this reverse engineered technology that you could give? And he said, well, most of it you can't track back to us because we're just that good. It doesn't happen. But one thing that we can tell you is,
I knew about the Wingmakers before I was ever online. Before my memories were activated, the Wingmakers were part of my life. So, like you were saying, synchronicities.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I've been on the path for a long time.
Right on. It's the real deal, you know, except I want to say the last Neruda interview seemed to have some disinformation thrown in it. But it's really hard because there's so much truth still in it. And, you know, to go through this information, even more so now, you need a good BS meter, you know, to be able to tell the real from the fluff. But
there's been a lot of interference with the later work, too. That was one thing about me reading it before I was online. I was reading the originals.
Right on. Right on. Because of that, I was very familiar with the terms LERM, you know, ENS. So there was a gentleman long ago, late 90s, his name was James Casbolt. Are you familiar with James?
I am familiar with James, and with a lot of the damage that he's done to the overall community.
Yeah, because the ACIO and the faction of the ACIO that is actually like boots on the ground, you know, extraterrestrials here in technology transfer programs, is called the Labyrinth Group. So AR said, you know, who you need to pay attention to is the Labyrinth Group. The ACIO, he told me, is more just research and development. And it's mostly, you know, human people that are a part of.
They also keep files.
I'm sure. But he said the Labyrinth Group is the ones that are interested in you, me, Michael. And he said, well, you need to be aware they're not all Sam. Sam.
No, not all Sam.
Yeah, they don't.
The ones Anunnaki, that I interact with are not Sam.
Yeah, and which is interesting because, you know, I don't want to jump all over the place, but I will tell you, when I was brought into that fold, the creatine kinase, the 2100 levels they found in my blood, they said that out of the 51 members that they had within the Labyrinth Group, and the ACIO, a lot of the ACIO doesn't even know that the Labyrinth Group exists. But anyhow, he said my levels of 2100 would have put me in the middle of those 12. Just a tidbit of info. They said the highest was 12,000, and they pretty much said he had the ability to spontaneously combust. Not No,
Jeez.
let me back up.
Jeez.
Spontaneously heal. Yes, not combust. That was the problem in the first place, why it was created. Because as you said, the human vessel is not, it's not designed to hold that energetic level.
No,
So there
no.
was,
It's
when they
designed
first tried to
to
incarnate, they
hold a
would
human.
spontaneously combust.
It's not designed to hold anything but a human, and you try to put something else in it and you're going to have problems. So
Yeah, they said that's the whole reason that they made this Nephilim offshoot that would have a larger pool of prana and chi due to increased creatine kinase into the bloodstream. But so I recognized, by the way, what had happened was, as AR said, that not all these members, there's good cop and bad cop in everything. There's this
sure.
infiltrated in every single facet of everything that's human. And part of the,
Everything that's not human too.
yes, yes, except I heard sooner or later, man, you don't get to higher realms with these thought forms. That if you do have these thought forms of misuse of power over others or yourself or the planet, you'll self-implode. It's like if you're dealing with very high consciousness beings, they've weeded the fear and doubt and bullshit out of their own belief systems and became rainbow. But anyhow, that the ones you need to watch out for are the ones that are around our same level. It's getting out of kindergarten, you know. But I recognize the terms. What had happened was they had dangled the dark carrots in front of James Casbolt, and he bit and ended up releasing some of this information. I came across it and said, well, wait a minute, you know, this is Wingmaker stuff, you know? So I contacted the LPG, and right away they contacted me back and pretty much gave me this, you know, because I asked, is this the most current, you know, work? You know, I would like the most current MPO LERM documents, please.
Yeah.
And they, at this time, I didn't have contact with AR, but this other gentleman contacted me. He said, AR Bordon has kind of been waiting for you to contact him. And
oh, goody.
yeah, and pretty much gave me, you know, I always screw up the saying, but why teach a man to fish or give a man a fish when you can teach him to fish and he'll have fish for the rest of his life? Whatever that saying is what they told me. And they said, we would like to bring you into the fold. But people don't know this part of the story is, so simultaneously, I was brought into the LPG. And at that point, I had someone assigned to me to be like my mentor. And I didn't deal with AR. He was way up there above my pay grade. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what had
That's why
happened,
I was always surprised when you talked about how close you were with him.
that was later.
He was the boss.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And
this
I
was
was,
this was the connection that I kept missing, was how
I don't
you
share it often.
got close with the boss.
Yeah, what had happened was two things happened, and this is in 2008. One, I was brought into the LPG and didn't have much of a relationship with AR Bordon. I had a relationship with the mentor who was my liaison between AR and myself. But simultaneously is when I went to Sirius Rising. It was a festival in New York, and that's where I met the Anunnaki.
I have heard about that. I was invited one year and didn't have the money to go.
Ah, well, I didn't even know there were Syrians at that time. I thought I was going camping, you know. But yeah, that's where I met them face to face, or faceless as it turned out. But what I want to tell you is that severed my connection with the LPG and AR Borden for about a year. He said, you've met who's trying to put us out of business and vice versa. And no
Oh,
one
shit.
he said, no one that has had contact with the Marduk side, the skeleton crew that's been left behind, can go through any of our concentrations. So have a nice life.
Oh, shit.
And they ghosted me.
Marduk was who talked to me first.
It's who I met first. I was dropped off in the middle of Team Bad Cop, you know?
Yeah, well, Marduk picked me up and took me to his council and spent the next 3 days chewing everybody out because the being I am a fractal of had been literally chiseled out of the family tree. So, yeah. That was my introduction to the Sams. So
it wasn't pleasant for myself either at first. This meeting was very hostile because, you know, Marduk facilitated a role, and it truly is a role.
Marduk had an attitude.
Yeah, he's Team Bad Cop. He is the head of reflecting a negative polarity. And
that's a good term for it, yeah.
Yeah, and at first
I tended to think of it as ego and abuse of power.
But yes, I can totally understand. That's where AR himself is like, you know, the whole side of the dark Illuminati or whatever you want to call that, they're catering to Marduk, but Marduk's spiritual role was to reflect back a negative polarity. It was his role to, if he's seen someone vibrating negative frequency, to make you experience the folly of your own mental energy in hopes you change it. But to a human that has a lot of fear and doubt and bullshit in their belief system, and you're brought before a multidimensional being whose role it is to make you experience that, you're going to go demon, you know? Because when I met him, that was his role, and he was very death threats.
What I did was, after 3 days, I asked them a few questions, and I didn't like their answers, and I got mad and cussed them out and walked out.
I can tell you it's not going to be a fun meeting, you know.
Basically told him to shove it, and the next day Tiamat showed up at my house.
Right on. Yeah, there's death threats coming out against me and Boyd Bushman. He said, I work for a group of people. I found out this gentleman that was before me that was being used as a vessel for Marduk was very high ranking in the NSA. And so was his partner. And they said, we work for a group of people, which was the J. Allen Hynek family, by the way. He'd married into that family. He said, this family is still in charge of what gets released to the public regarding the extraterrestrial subject. And what you've brought to the table isn't on the list. So how can that be? And they caught me in a time, well, I was at a festival, so I can't say I was totally sober, you know? And I'm like, well, I willed it into manifestation. I said, I think it's bullshit that this information has been withheld from humanity, that you're actually stopping mankind from evolving. And so they said,
they're not stopping it, but they're slowing it down.
Yeah. So he asked me, he said, do you know anything about a young man who was just on Coast to Coast talking about a certain Boyd Bushman from Lockheed Martin? I'm like, yeah, I know everything about it. That's my movie that I did with David Sarita. And what had happened is, you know, John Hutchinson, the Hutchinson effect, the guy that pretty much made the anti-gravity laboratory in his, you know, and well, Lockheed Martin was very interested in having him work for them.
No kidding.
Yeah. So we had him in our film, but what had happened is right at the end of our production schedule, he was in contact with Boyd Bushman, and Boyd ended up, through John Hutchinson, agreeing for David to come to his office and film him for our film. And this really pissed off this Marduk incarnate who was now part of the J. Allen Hynek family. And he said, how could this be?
This is why your movie hasn't been shown.
It actually is now. It's on Amazon Prime. This one, the one that has been stopped, is the Spike TV. But
Okay.
you know what I've been told is, first of all, I got to tell you that this was very hostile. And he said, I work with a group of people who determine what gets released to the public. And this Boyd Bushman subject was not on the list. So how can that even be? And I said, well, I willed it in a manifestation. That seemed to very well get his attention. He said, we need to know what you know. And he pulled out this wand that had a purple diode, and I could feel it stimulating my third eye. And AR told me that, yeah, there's a lot of technology that if they want to know what you know, there's a lot more technology than lie detector tests. And he said,
Yes.
what I was explaining is exactly what they use. And truly, they can go in and hit your Akash. They can see exactly who you are, who you've ever been, who you'll be in the future, probably, you know, and that's what changed everything. All of a sudden, this individual started crying and said, how is it that you're here? And became very submissive, which was a total change in attitude. Let me tell you, before this point, he was in bad cop role and death threats were coming out. Now he's like, we've been waiting for you to surface. Don't know how it is that you're here, but if it's okay with you, we'd like to have a council meeting. I'm like, what the hell are you even talking about? You know? And he said, well, there's going to be another celestial object in our space in the very near future. And we want to know all of your ideas on what effect you think it will have on our religions and our world governments and whatnot. And I'm like, well, I'm totally cool with talking about that. I actually love the subject, you know. So the next thing I knew, I was part of a council meeting, and this is in the flesh, by the way. Like I said, like so it was kind of strange to all of a sudden be in this gazebo and all these other people entered the gazebo. It was weird too, because at this point too, they offered me some very young girls and I turned it down. I'm like, no, I don't, that's not my thing. So then they're like, well, that guy that wanted to give you a massage, he's available. I'm like, no, I don't think I'm not interested in any of that. Let's just talk. But so it got a little weird. But
of course, they have to try to tempt you with everything that they think can put you off your path.
Yes, indeed. Well, what had happened was at the end of that, they said, well, I guess it's time that we're going to start acclimating the public to our existence and our reality. And I said, when? And he said, obviously before 2012. And he said it kind of like I asked a stupid question. But at that point, one of the other Anunnaki went up and put his arm around him and said, don't worry, my king. Now you can finally rest. Because from what I understand now, the role he took on to make us experience our own negative thought forms, it's about the worst job in the universe, right? You know, I often think, they told me, look at the song Pink Floyd, Mother. Just replace Marduk will make sure all your nightmares come true. Marduk will make sure nothing dirties you through. It was his role to make sure that nothing dirtied us through by making us experience our own nightmares. Only if you choose it, though. Like Chief Yahweh is like, that side can only have dominion if you've given it your approval.
Yeah, you have to
self-inflicted
give them
suffering.
That's one of the biggest things that I keep talking about on my personal wall on Facebook is you have to give this crap your approval. If you don't want it to happen, say no.
Absolutely.
Basic. You know, and they tell me, well, I don't believe in that. Doesn't matter. The controllers believe in that. They're the ones doing this to you.
Yeah, from the highest level, you know, when I was brought to that ancient ceremony and told them I wouldn't participate, you know, That's what he said, you know, and I want to get, because it's flipped with this of meeting Marduk is, you know, there was death threats coming out before, and afterwards I said, well, am I still in danger here? You know, like, you know,
Yeah,
and they
great
said,
question.
no, now that we know that you're one of us, no one will even be able to harm you. And so, you know, that was 2008. I can tell you before that, they tried to harm me. They actually hit me with brass knuckles and shattered my jaw, and I had to have my face wired back
Yeah,
together. I'm not
I remember
immune.
that.
Yeah, I was put to the test of, you know, but
Well, they've been trying to kill me, and the closest they have come since I've been public was when they broke my shoulder in 2019. And I had a really hard time coming back from that, but I'm being told by different groups, we can't kill you. And I'm like, I don't know why. I'm
you know
still
what?
in a
Some of it,
human body.
I can tell you that, you know, before even this of meeting Marduk and him saying, now that we know you're one of us, no one will be able to harm you. I had met Bob Dean, and we talked over,
Oh, I am
it
so
was,
jealous.
I was, it was a, you know, I've met some of my rock star idols and heroes. I don't think I've ever been so starstruck than meeting Bob Dean. You know,
Bob
it was
Dean,
at the,
I would be starstruck. Yeah, come on.
yeah, it was cool. We talked over breakfast for about an hour. You know, just me and him sitting at a table at the UFO Congress. But there's a reason I was telling you that. I spun out. Sorry, I
It's
totally lost
okay.
it.
It happens. So,
But getting
you,
back to AR Bordon, I guess that's when I was. So I met Marduk. AR Bordon's people went, have a nice life. No one that has met them is even allowed to work with us. And
why?
so for he said they're the ones that are trying to put us out of business, and vice versa. And he said that, you know, Marduk's clan is the Georgia Guidestones clan, the
Yeah,
transhumanist.
I knew that.
But so for a year they totally ghosted me, and and I remember emailing him going, I think that's a bunch of bullshit. You know what I mean? Who are you to tell me I've sided with Marduk? And, you know, because
When
I
I
haven't.
didn't,
I didn't.
just because
So I,
you met him doesn't mean you took his side. It meant
yeah, I
you
told him,
were
I said,
offered a choice.
I can't control who comes and says hi to me in this
Yeah.
reality, you know? And so, you know, ENS is Anunnaki assisted remote viewing, if you can imagine such a thing.
Oh
So
my God.
they,
You mean they were using leaning in?
well, I can explain the technology. They said not only can they remote view, but they can create an increase in their Meissner field, or your
Okay.
electromagnetic subtle energy field, to the point that, you know, yeah, a lot of people, let's say you can remote view an ancient saloon, you know, and see what's going on. But if you create enough energy within your aura field, we'll just call it, you can bring in a new avatar at that location. So now in the 1800s, you're not only observing it, but you can go up and have a drink. That's ENS. That's the
Okay.
ability to remote view and bring in a new physical avatar. And he said, by the way, you know, these are avatars. It's not much different. You know, we're creating this physical vessel, which is an avatar. Some of them have the ability
Mm-hmm.
to actually create a new avatar to travel, which also gets into
Um,
stargates, and even being able to go through a stargate and be on Mars. You might
I
be
have
bringing in a new avatar.
I have interacted with Nanar and Nangish Zeta through avatar bodies
Hmm.
that they produced. They said it was through leaning in technology.
Sounds like the same thing to me.
So,
But
Nanar was not a positive influence in my life. Nangishita has been more neutral. So
that's interesting. I've met a lot of these people we're talking about. I hate to call them the cast of characters, but you know,
they are a cast of characters. Yes,
they are present. Well, some of them have now dropped their robes, but Native American Indian culture chiefs, you know, Nanar was here, and he he was very instrumental in bringing me and Sarah together. So it's weird, like anyhow.
For some reason, the Sam Royals did not like me personally. And I don't have enough past life memory to know why. So
they don't like me either, but they have to deal with me.
I'm in the position of they seriously dislike me, and I am best off not being around them. So
it really,
they did
you know,
say
Nanars.
They did say I was part of them, but that, like I mentioned before, my name had been chiseled out of the family tree.
Well, you know that there's two different sides of the family tree. There's the Pleiadian Syrian side, the Inky side, and then there's the pure Anunnaki Syrian side through Enlil. And it's just pretty much known that these two different sides have not seen eye to eye. So if you're of the Pleiadian side, which I know you are, I can see a lot of the other side of the family going, you know, they just have different views. But you know what? They've been proven wrong. And that's a whole nother story. But, you know, we're not just slave labor. I'm talking about Homo sapien. And now they know. They know. And I proved them wrong by becoming human. You see, like if one of us.
Nanar called me a girl Lulu and said I was an abomination. So when I say he was negative, he personally put me in the truth machine and was peeling off altars and destroying them. So
I'm so sorry.
I had been condemned to forever death. That was the term they used. And it was telepathic. That's what it was in English. I don't know what it would have been in Jahami.
Yeah,
So this was a really bad experience for me. In my particular case, I was physically rescued by the Germans in space. And they lost a ship doing it. So this was a real physical experience.
Right on. I'm so sorry. And I know you're not the proverbial you. Yeah. Your experience with meeting them will vary greatly with what side of the family you're meeting and how they perceive humans. Because, you know, the fact of the matter is we are Lulus. You know, all of us that have come here and taken on. And the only reason we do this is to help, you know. And truly it is to create rainbows and help mankind be more ready for this time of the Kali Yuga, of this grand cycle that we're in. People don't know, but our mental energy, and like we said, energy can't be created or destroyed. It's tied to the Earth's magnetic field. And the stronger the magnetic field, the more the time lag between the thought and the manifestation of thought. And so when you're in very low magnetics, like there's no time to change your mind. Right now, we're almost experiencing the thought and the manifestation of thought in real time. There is no time lag. Whereas in the past, we would have time to change our mind. And but if you enter this time,
I'm noticing that when I do ritual, that it happens now, and it didn't used to.
Yeah, we're in that time. And so that truly a lot of the work that we've been doing here for thousands of years is to help. You don't want to enter this timeline without doing some spiritual homework and weeding the fear out of your own personal belief system. When I say you, again, it's not you. I'm talking about the proverbial you that I'm included in. I've had to do a lot of soul searching, and fear wears many masks, you know, and it's reflected back in a million ways.
Because of my experiences on Mars with spiders, I keep having nightmares of spiders. I had one last night.
Yeah.
So I am being informed that I have to deal with my fear of spiders. And I've been being visited by grandmother spider, and you have enough Native American to know who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, I have to get over this fear of being eaten alive, which was my experience on Mars. So it's a fear based in my personal reality. So
yeah, I've learned much about the spider altar. For Native American Indians, this gets really bizarre, but I was told, Michael, you're in the most compassionate level of this. This is human experience. I was told, no one here doesn't make it. If someone collapses during this ceremony, you got Yeshua out there to go and fan them down with a feather and give them a drink of water. But simultaneously, we got 7 more ceremonies going on that get darker and darker and darker until the end of that line. It'll be Abraham, you know, you need to kill your son or sacrifice an animal or something. And the answer is no, you know what I mean? Because
the answer is supposed to be no.
Yeah. But the first altar dark, which what he told me was, you know, right now you're at the most compassionate version of this. There's not a lot of suffering. You only have very few people actually participating in this level. But if you were at a dark 3, we have 500 people participating. And there, if you pass out or collapse, no one's there to save you and help. The first altar dark out of the 7 is the spider altar. So it makes sense to me that it's but the thing is, you know, some of my friends that were, for the very first time, they're at the most compassionate level, but sooner or later they'll be invited to a dark 3 or a dark 4. And I asked him, I said, is there anyone who has started to go down that path of darkness and is, because he tells people, he's like, don't listen to anyone who tells you to do something that offends your soul, even if it's coming from me, being Yahweh. That makes a lot of sense, of even if it's coming from me. Because he told me, he said, I'm the only one who holds a seat on both the light and the dark councils. I'm the only one who sits directly in the middle of those 2 councils. And I have to give any initiate.
He was on both councils, yes.
So he said, it's just the role that I'm here, that any initiate that comes before the council, I have to give them both sides of duality. I have to pray to God they won't do this, but ask them if they want to do this, you know? But
they have to be offered the choice.
Yes. And I've come to realize, I know him personally now very well. This is my brother, in-law. And we have been together now, working together actually. But you know what? I got to share something with you. I'm not sure if you know about the Michigan artifacts, but there are artifacts, about 30,000 of them, that were removed out of mound builder sites, that tells the exodus of the Nephilim from the hills of Galilee and how they intermingle.
I've not heard of this, so please.
Michigan artifacts, yes. So what had happened was, I was gifted a flash drive. You probably met Jennifer Stein at the Stargate to the Cosmos. She was there.
I think so, yeah.
Who she
There were
is
a lot of people there.
yes. This one was very special to me because she happens to be Zachariah Sitchin's personal assistant and filmographer and best friend. So she gifted me a flash drive of everything that Zachariah Sitchin was interested in and researching at the time of his passing. And part of this flash drive, which I still own, there's a lot of video, by the way, as well. That's pretty mind-blowing. I think I'm going to make a new documentary and call it Zachariah's Flash Drive. But
well, I was just thinking before I forget to ask you to make me a copy.
Absolutely. So what had happened was,
you still have my address.
You know what? I'm sure I do.
Okay.
So what had happened was these Michigan artifacts is on the flash drive. At first, I had no clue what they were. I'm just like, well, what are these, you know? And I find out they're called the Michigan artifacts. And so then I'm at one of the Star Knowledge conferences, and I was filmed for the Canadian Public Corporation. By the way, they're teaching our Star Knowledge wisdom starting right now at the University of Ottawa. I didn't know it was this big. And it's being broadcast to the whole country through the Canadian Public Corporation. And I became friends with the producer.
That they're doing yours.
You know, I feel very fortunate. I didn't know. I swear to God, sometimes I feel like the Forrest Gump of all this. I'm just like, hey, you want to do an interview?
Just here.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, sure. But then he's like, I don't think you understand what a big deal it is here in Canada. And here they had like a black tie affair where they showed the show that went out over the public, Canadian Public Corporation at the University of Ottawa. And he's like, what do you think we should call this movement? And I'm like, well, you met us at a Star Knowledge conference, you know? So they called it the Star Knowledge Symposium. And what you'll find is if you type in University of Ottawa and Star Knowledge, you'll see that this, it's live, you know? And one thing though, it really struck me is when you bring that up, look at when it gets down to who's funding it. It's the United States government. I was like, there's no way the United States government doesn't know the connection between star beings and Native American Indian First Nations, because it is the United States government who is funding this release of information in Canada. Isn't that weird? With what just happened with what was supposed to be disclosure. And it's them going, well, we don't know. We have no freaking clue.
I got a link. I downloaded it. I looked at it. It was 9 pages of bullshit.
Yeah,
boring as hell. And you get to the last page and it says, well, our conclusion is we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I've seen this meme of that scientist from Lockheed Martin. They're like, with this upcoming disclosure, you know, how scared should we be? And the scientist is like, somewhere between not at all and completely. It's like, that pretty much covers it.
Pretty much. Okay. Now, from my side, having personal interaction with the Ponti and a couple of other groups that shall at this point remain nameless, we have like 70 treaties with star nations dating back to the Eisenhower administration.
Yeah.
They are all ending between now and 2025. All 70 of them. And all 70 of these star nations are refusing to stay the secret mistress of the American government.
That makes sense.
The first one that ends is this August. So you can expect official first contact anytime after August. And the Ponti are leading it.
Can't wait.
So I can't wait either. And I have this terrible fear it's going to be in Australia instead of the United States, where I can't go.
Mm.
So
It'll be interesting how it unfolds. Obviously the whole point of this is to become a galactic society. And what the Anunnaki have told me is it won't happen through any form of governance that we know of. It won't be Biden or Trump or Putin. They said it truly needs to come through the Native American Indian First Nation. They've been, well, what we're saying, the worst genocide on this planet. And truly, it is the Anunnaki human hybrid Nephilim bloodline who has been here trying to help mankind. And the Native American Indian First Nations truly have the knowledge to live in peace and harmony with this planet and not to overtax it. And so I was wondering, well, how the hell is that going to happen? This is probably about 2 years ago they communicated this. And then to find out about the Canadian program going on right now. And then, I'm sure you just seen that, I think it was Oklahoma just gave back like half of Oklahoma, went back to the Cherokee, because truly.
I don't think it was the Cherokee. I thought it was another tribe. But they have, it would be a native tribe.
Yeah. I'll have to look back on that. But, what I'm finding out, I'm Seneca on my mother's side, and I'm Erie Montauk on my father's side. And the Seneca...
My partner, Lou, is Iroquois from Ohio somewhere. His grandmother was in a residential school and was adopted by the people who ran the school. So we have no idea, but the majority of the kids at the school were Iroquois.
Well, it would make sense. East Lake, Ohio, what I'm very involved with releasing, I had tracked the mound builders into East Lake, Ohio. And this is years ago. And I got contacted by a guy from the Smithsonian saying, I see that you've tracked the mound builders back to Ohio. Do you know that there's still an ancient earthwork that's intact there? This is my hometown. I'm like, no one knows about it there.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, now I've worked with the East Lake Historical Society and met with the mayor. He's like, oh, I thought that was a garbage dump. They actually went and just dumped garbage on it. It's such a large mound. It takes over a mile to walk around it. And they
used it as a garbage dump.
Yes.
Oh, so, my God.
So this guy from the Smithsonian says, I was there in the 1970s, and there is artifacts. We did a small excavation of that mound. Like I said, it's huge. It takes over a mile to walk around it. But some of the artifacts are still in the East Lake Willoughby Indian Museum, and they tie that location back to ancient Sumer, which is the Morning Star. It's on it. I went and actually got to hold them in my hand, the artifacts. I was told it was important to get that information. But I can tell you, just last year, I'm sure you see me post all about it, is I was part of a team.
A lot of incredible stuff.
Oh, thank you. No one's paying attention. It doesn't much matter, right? But I'm
paying attention, even if I don't always comment.
Well, thank you. That's where I brought the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, to that actual location.
I remember you did that. And you and
that was profound.
You and Sarah had something that was basically a wedding ceremony with the skull.
Yeah. I have that all filmed too. And we both agreed we're not going to release, because I got the whole thing pro shot, the actual ceremony. But me and her, man, it was like thousands of lifetimes of the joy of finding each other, because I found out this ain't our first rodeo. We've had to find each other in many past incarnations. But the whole thing was filmed, but I'm not going to release that because we're both bawling like babies. And,
It's personal. It shouldn't have to
yeah,
be
it is
nice.
personal. But I can
Some
tell
things
you,
should be personal, even for public people.
yeah, everything else is fine, but that is personal. But Chief Golden Light Eagle, I had brought him in as well.
Mhm.
And he had communicated that that is over 200,000 years old, the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. It's truly the 13th crystal skull. But I can tell you one weird thing that happened with that is, well, I didn't create it, but my higher self did. You know,
Okay.
Inky, it was the creator of that skull. And there's 12 other crystal skulls, but those are all Earth-centric. They contain the Akash of 1/12 of the Earth. But the
Wow.
13th is the galactic connection. And if all of the other 12 fail, it's like the fail-safe, because the
Okay.
13th contains all of the information of the other 12 plus the galactic connection. So this thing's sitting in front of me, and all of a sudden it's like, touch your forehead to mine. I'm like, what? You know, like, what the hell's talking to me? And it's like, and so I
So
had
what
to,
did it sound like?
it sounded just like a voice in my head, a male, you know, it was just, that's all it said. So you're not allowed to touch the skull. It's the current owner. You're allowed to put your hands close to it, you know, and but that's it. And I had to look at him and go, you know, this is kind of awkward, but this thing's telling me to touch my forehead to it. He said, oh, I know you have permission. He said, that's a really advanced initiation, by the way. So I did. I put my third eye to its third eye. And I'll tell you, I decided to open my eyes. What a weird perspective. I was like looking through the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull like it was a big binoculars, you know, and it just looked like this crystalline world of like, it was beautiful. Like it actually kind of shocked me of nothing kind of prepared me to look into the eyes of the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. But I right away, you know, at that ceremony at the ancient Mount site, by the way, this is one of the things I shared with Graham Hancock, because the oldest street that takes you to that mound site is called Lost Nation.
Mm.
Ding, ding, ding. Someone knew what's
Ding, ding,
up, you
ding.
know? So you get down to the bottom of Lost Nation and you take a left, and the main mound site, which is now tore down, they got a middle school that sits there now. But that was where the main mound complex was. And it's only about a mile once you turn on to, you know, the road that goes alongside the lake. But if you go to the right, it actually tells you what happened to the Lost Nation in the street names. The first street you come to is called Tioga, and Tioga means the entering place, peaceful valley garden. And then the next street is Cherokee, and then Iroquois, and then Seneca Seminole, then Mohawk, and then Thunderbird, which is interesting. The Thunderbirds, the bald eagles, have now returned to this area. And when I was growing up there was no bald eagles, you know, and now they're everywhere. They've just taken over this land. Ooh.
Oh,
And it's kind of interesting because the Montauk tribe, the Erie tribe, used to have this powwow where this big field, and the city would also have like their freedom festival, you know, they would have it at that field. But now no one's allowed to do anything there, and it's off to, you know, because of the bald eagles. They made it their home, and because they're protected, no one can enter that land. So I showed
so
this to Graham Hancock.
they are protecting the land.
Yes. And Graham Hancock, I showed him all of this of like, it had to be a Templar, right? That actually, he said, oh my God, while someone was trying to erase this information from the history books, someone encoded it into the actual street names, the street map of that
Oh,
area. And sure enough, you know, so Seminole, the bloodline, it says right there, they split from the Great Lakes area, and part stayed and became the Iroquois, Seneca, but some went back to Florida, because Florida is actually the entering place in North America of the Nephilim. They went and intertwined into the Mayan tribes first, taught them the Mayan calendar, pyramid building. But when this darkness set in and they started thinking they needed to do these flesh and blood sacrifice ceremonies, the Atlanteans weren't like, let's get the hell out of Dodge, you know, I don't think they're getting it. And they left the Mexican part there, and they went to Crystal River, Florida. And this is important because this is the first mound site. It's really close to where me and Sarah live. And she took me there right away. So this was my ancient site, you know. Yours is up there in Ohio. This is mine. So what we found out was very recently, there was a show, it's on Amazon Prime, and they were tracking down what happened to the Mayans, because people know, like, the elders just disappeared. And, well, they went to Florida. And at this mound site, which there's still a large mound complex at Crystal River, Florida. You can just Google it. This TV film crew called Unexplained and Unexplored went there, and they're like, well, you got these these mound complexes here, but if this was truly a Mayan complex, and you know that they marked equinoxes and solstices, they found those alignments there. They said along this line, though, there should be a Mayan step pyramid if this is truly a Mayan complex. But that line took them right out into the river, Crystal River. But across the river is this no trespassing Florida-owned land. So they put up a ground penetrating radar equipped drone and went over, and sure enough, they found a huge Mayan step pyramid in Florida. This is awesome. History in the making, you know?
Yeah.
And it's big too. It's about 76 feet long and still really in good shape. So that's something we have to look forward to in the future. It is, awesome. You know, but this gets into play too with one of the grandmothers who told me she asked me to get in her minivan, and I thought I was in trouble because I was smoking weed. Stupid story, but it's true. So I get in, I wasn't in trouble. She said, we want to talk to you about how our bloodline, the Anunnaki human hybrid bloodline, entered the North American continent. She said, but to show you, it would be nice if I had a map of the United States to show you on. And she went on the inside of her minivan window, a freaking map of the United States appeared out of nowhere.
So it looked like
she LERMed it out, and it looked like Star Wars, kind of like all red 3D graphic United States. And she looked at me and she said, I know you can see it. Yep, it's right there. There was no not seeing it, you know? So she proceeded to use it for like the next 15 minutes to show me the migration route of the Nephilim bloodline into the North American continent, which became the mound builders. And she just pretty much took it at the top of Florida. And then she drew like 3 candy canes. And she said each time they would go and they would never overtax the land. And once the tribe grew so big that it would tax the land for gardening and whatever, they would just move on. Some of them would stay there. And and she said, basically these 3 candy canes became the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota tribes of the Sioux. But like the 3rd candy cane going up would also contain the Cherokee and the Iroquois and the Seneca. But you know, a lot of this too, the other side in Canada, because the bloodline just didn't stay on this side. They the Huron tribe. So a lot of what's going to be unveiled in the future is this untold story, you know?
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's brought back some magic. Especially now, you know, Chief Golden Light Eagle said, don't think that you being in Florida now is like some by chance. He said, you know, you were known as the peacemaker who united the Iroquois tribes. But people think there's one chief that wasn't going along with the plan. And that was because, first of all, in the story now, if someone tells you about, you know, the peacemaker story, the chief that wasn't going along with the plan was known as a war chief, like a evil war chief. And well, guess what? Males don't have the highest level of authority within the Native American First Nations. It wouldn't have been a male. It's no other than White Buffalo Calf Woman. And White Buffalo...
It had to... The real authority in the Native American tribal system most of the time were the grandmothers.
Yes, yes.
If you were bad enough that your grandmother wanted you kicked out of the tribe,
you were kicked out.
You were kicked
maybe
out.
Even killed.
Maybe.
Yeah, they but you can see from her perspective, at this point, the Iroquois were not a confederacy. They weren't a united tribe. There were 5 tribes that were at war with one another for ages, brother against brother, tribe against tribe. And not only had darkness set in amongst them, but even internally, they were at war within themselves,
Well, that's usually why people are at war with others, is because they're not at peace with themselves.
Yeah, if they were at peace with themselves, it probably wouldn't happen. But what had happened is, if you ask any Iroquois how their tribe became united, they'll tell you the story of the peacemaker, who, everyone knows the name Hiawatha, but they don't really understand there's a story connected to Hiawatha. And Hiawatha had, because this one chief, it's White Buffalo Calf Woman, wasn't going along with the plan. She's like, how about, I don't want nothing to do with what you people are doing. I see how you treat each other. I see how you treat this planet. And I see how you treat yourself. Not interested. And so Hiawatha goes and unites these chiefs to go after her with the arrow. And this is the Pleiadian Gaia, not a good idea, you know what I'm saying? They got their asses handed to them. And not only that, the warriors had left their villages unintended. So the incoming genocide squad from Europe just wiped out their villages. So when Hiawatha and these other chiefs went back after getting their asses handed to them, their remainder of their families had been slaughtered. So Hiawatha went actually to kill himself, went to the water, Lake Ontario, and he was going to drown himself. He couldn't handle the grief of what had happened. And as the story goes, that's when the peacemaker, who was a member of the Huron tribe, it was a previous incarnation of mine. And we're going to get into that because Chief told me a story that deals with what happened then. After Hiawatha had united the tribes to try to take her out with the arrow, she moved away from her people. And all of this is in the actual peacemaker story. And it says that she moved away to a land that was treacherous to even try to reach her. And it was filled with alligators and snakes and swamps and, spiders.
Sounds like Florida.
Yeah, but it's nowhere in the story because evidently that's not the Great Lakes area, so it's a mystery. But it is. She just went back home, to Florida. But now imagine the peacemaker showing up and somehow he was able to heal Hiawatha's heart. He took him into a different state of consciousness and had him meet his family that had been slaughtered to show him we're not these bodies alone. And your family, they're still here, even though not in this form, but, you will meet them again. And he caused Hiawatha to regain his reason for living. So Hiawatha said, can you teach the other chiefs this? Well, the other chiefs just got their asses handed to them. They weren't about it. They're like, well, if you're this holy man, how about we try to kill you? And if you survive, we'll listen to what you got to say. So they did. They had him climb a tree and the lake was frozen over. They cut down the tree, threw him out into the lake. He went through the ice, never resurfaced. Like some holy man that is. Next morning, there was smoke coming out of the trees and they went here. He was sitting around a fire, so over and over, all the different chiefs would test him. And sooner or later, they listened to what he had to say. But imagine now, White Buffalo Calf Woman had moved to what Chief Golden Light Eagle said is Miami. It's all the way to the bottom of Florida, And not only that, at that time,
away from them, huh?
She wanted away. Like, I've had enough of this. But there was also no fresh drinking water. The underground spring aquifers were not in Florida at that point. So Ea, the water bearer, right, or peacemaker, as he came and united these other chiefs to go and try to make her change polarity, because she had been given, well, if the last time purification was water, the next one was going to be fire, and it would have been a solar flare. And we weren't getting a passing grade, you know. So to save humanity, even, he took the other chiefs of the Iroquois all the way to Miami, but it would have been on foot. Can you imagine that journey?
A trip.
Yeah, quite a trip. But as he went through
cross country in a car, that was a trip.
Yeah, yeah. So as he came through, Chief said the first underground spring aquifer to bring fresh drinking water to his mother is exactly the words Chief Golden Light Eagle used. He said he's actually got to go to this this spring. He said it's truly the fountain of youth. It's not in St. Augustine where people think it is. It's in Miami, and it's owned by a Iroquois chief, and it's not open to the public. But he said he was allowed to go. He had a group of people. He said, I thought all these people were pretty cool, but the chief was like, no, no, yeah, yeah. If you got to know, you didn't go in. It was just that simple. But he said he got to go in, and they weren't allowed to take any water out, but they were allowed to bathe their medicine man healing instruments, whether it's a feather or a rattle or a shaker. And then they could take those tools back to their tribe, and it would bring forth the attributes of divine living water back to their tribes. But he said, Michael, first of all, you need to know when the peacemaker went to Florida to try to get her to change her mind, said that the reason she even left her teepee was the peacemaker's song was pure. He knew cosmic harmonious frequencies, and she knew that he was using proper frequency. But simultaneously, when she came out, the sun disappeared from the sky. This is part of the original Peacemaker story. It was a full totality eclipse. I'm sure he knew that this would be happening, but you can imagine the rest of the chiefs going, holy shit, well, I think we're going to listen to what this guy has to say, because the sun just disappeared. But, you know, I met Sarah at the full totality eclipse at Serpent Mound. And so it's all truly, history does repeat itself. But what had happened was, Chief said, Michael, the only thing that, he said, you are a medicine man. You are a part of the Serpent clan. And I asked him, well, what does the Serpent clan mean? He goes, it's those of us that have galactic heritage. And every tribe has a Serpent clan, and those are the medicine men, and the shamans of the tribe are the Serpent clan. So the Serpent clan is present within all Native American First Nations. But he said, all these underground spring aquifers, there's thousands of them now, that he said in Miami, there's only about 50 feet of dirt that was separating the ocean from this pristine, clean water. And he said it kind of blew his mind. Like, how is that 50 feet of dirt holding back an ocean, you know? But he said that the only thing that makes a medicine man's healing tool a healing tool is they have to make it with their own two hands. And he said, you know, these discs I make, the 432 discs specifically, that's your healing instrument. That since they're made from your own two hands, you know, I think she's looking for her.
On you. I had to go get mine.
Right on, right on. Yeah, you know what? Please show that, because that just so happens I don't have one sitting in front of me. Oh, right on. That's part of the communication from them.
Yeah, this is the one out of your set that spoke to me the most, and it's an eclipse. It's not a crescent moon. And
right, it is the eclipse.
A 7-point star between the moon and Earth.
Yes, indeed. So he told me,
And I counted, and there's 155 little black dots around the edge.
I was wondering, I've never counted them, so thank you. I wonder do you know what that signifies? I don't.
I have not figured that one out yet.
Well, thank you. That's a test, because I've looked at it and I'm like, my eyes are just not what they used to be.
I put a piece of tape on the edge, and so I had a starting point marked. Otherwise I'd be losing it.
So he told me, I'd learned to do this ancient water blessing ceremony at Serpent Mound from the elders. And he said, you're back in Florida again to complete the work you started. And he said, you're going to go do this water blessing ceremony. And these are my shamanic healing tool, He said, with your technology, he said, with my shaker or feather, I could only bring that attribute out to the tribe, the few people around me if they needed it. But with this, I can get this out to the whole world. And so interestingly enough, I did the blessing ceremony at a spring here named Rainbow Springs. And these springs here are unbelievably beautiful. But so it's all part of the story of how these discs even came into. I really think it could be the first proof. I'm sure you've heard that we belong in a holographic reality. And the whole idea is every bit of a hologram contains all of the information. And it's actually proven with, a negative of a rose, a normal negative. If you cut it in half, you'll have the top of the rose and then you'll have the bottom stem in the bottom of the negative. But if you take a holographic negative, which they're real, they exist, you cut it in half, you don't get the top and the bottom of the rose. You get two complete full roses, but from a different perspective. Then if you cut those, you get 4 absolute whole roses, and so on and so forth. You can cut it down to the most minuscule little piece possible, and then shine a laser through it and you'll get the full rose again. So in that way, I say it's important to understand this is the type of reality we're in, because that means on a cellular level, every smallest bit of us contains all of the information. But you can see with that 432 image, it's actually being created by the 432 frequency. It was my guitar.
The 432 image.
Yes, indeed. Matter of fact, the elders told me this is probably the most important thing I've done. He said, yeah, these discs will restructure water, but guess what? We're water, right? So when
you gave one to me, which is the one I have on, and you gave one to Lou, and we have it sitting under my Brita picture.
Ah, right on. Perfect. So. It should do wonders. I don't.
It has.
It's kind of weird because, in the beginning, I didn't, people would ask me what it does. I'm like, well, it's a really powerful energy tool, or it's a nice paperweight. Whatever you want to do with it is cool with me. But, because
it's water. And you have some reports to prove that.
From NASA, yeah. That was a mind-blowing, Richard Hoagland invited me on his radio show, 3 hours. And during it, he's like, Michael, we know your story. People that don't know who Richard Hoagland is, he was Walter Cronkite's science advisor, and he was NASA's liaison to the public regarding NASA stuff. And so...
stuff. And he was one of the guys that brought forward the moon anomaly pictures.
Yes, and the face on Mars he was the one that brought that forth as well. So he was kind of a hero of mine. So when he asked me to be on his radio show, again, I was kind of starstruck. It's like meeting Bob Dean, And during the interview, he said, Michael, we know your story sounds crazy to most people, but NASA has been looking into how energy works multidimensionally for a very long time, and your numbers are right on the money. So he said, interestingly enough, he said this 432-based mathematics and physics is tied into the precessional cycle numbers. It's all the same, which that toasted my noodle.
For
But
the audience, the precessional numbers have to do with the way that the Earth rotates around the sun and the sun rotates around the galaxy.
yes, indeed. So during this interview, he's like, I'd like to arrange for NASA to look into your 432 crystal energy disk creations. So, you know, it's weird. No matter what, it's hard to stop that internal dialogue from going, don't count your chickens before they hatch. You know what I mean? I couldn't stop it. I was like, well, don't get too excited. They might not find anything. And then this other voice are like, are you serious? You know, you're even doubting this for a minute that this has even happened. But sure enough, they, well, I can show you. I actually created a disk here. Imagine they have technology that can record the amount of photonic light energy within a droplet of water. It started off with what's called Curian photography, which is you can show the energy field around. Curian? I think I'm pronouncing, I might be pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah, it was developed in Russia, and it kind of photographs life force and things.
Yes, yes. Well, NASA has like a more specific offshoot of that technology that specifically looks at photonic light energy within water, in a droplet of water. So they took California municipal tap water, and then they took Canadian spring water, and then Nevian bottled water, and they tested all three waters. So at control for California tap water, it's almost dead. There's just this little tiny pinprick of light of energy left in the water because we put chlorine in it, we put fluoride, we've ran it down hundreds of miles of pipe and then made it take right-hand turns. There's no right-hand turns in nature, you know, and we've killed our water. And it's interesting because the human body gets most of our chi and prana from water. It's, you know, we're 70 to 90% water depending on our age. And so when we're drinking municipal tap water that's nearly dead, our body is not getting the energy it needs. But so imagine this tap water. They go and use this technology and they take 6 photographs of this droplet of water. And it looks like a little tiny pinprick of light up in the star, you know? But then they took that exact same water and they just put it on a disc and let it sit there. They did 6 more photographs at 15 minutes, 6 more at 30 minutes, and 6 more at 50 minutes. And at 15 minutes, well, this is, instead of a little pinprick of light, trying to get it where you can actually see it. It looks like a supernova.
Yeah, it does.
And this is the actual chi, the, you know, life force. So I said to the biophysicist from NASA, consulting NASA scientist, I said, well, wait a minute. If there's no energy, but now there's energy, isn't that some form of unlimited free energy? And I said, where's that extra energy coming from? Is it from our sun? Is it from our planets, our planet's electromagnetic fields, tectonic plates? She said, no, it's coming from another dimension. That really was my noodle again, you know, like I've never had to ask myself, well, what's it mean to be drinking water that has energy from another dimension in it? You should be asking yourself the same thing because you put it under your Brita water. I can tell you is what they've communicated to me. This is another crop circle that was part of the communication. And it's hard to see, but see at the end of this outer ring, which, by the way, that is the seal of the 7 archangels. When you look into Gnostic Christianity, it is what it is. But see how it looks like there's star constellations within each point at the end? Probably kind of hard to see if it's coming into focus. What it is 3. Let me make sure I get this right. You can tell where to start counting because there's a circle at one of them. That's where you start counting binary And of course I don't have my, so it's 3344445, a 7-digit number. And turns out it's not random at all. If you type in 3344445, it's a gene in our human DNA that is called a universal stress protein. And this universal stress protein is the body's ability. The more of this protein that's released into the human body, the more able we are to handle outside stressors. That's why it's called a universal stress protein, such as increased solar activity and radiation. So I'm absolutely convinced they're telling you by creating 432 water, it's got instruction in it. Obviously, there's instruction coming because you put a glass of dead water on it and it revitalizes it and resurrects it into living water, holy water, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
but what else is it doing? I truly believe it's unlocking parts of our DNA that will enable us to handle. I'm sure you've heard a lot of talk about a solar flare coming. I think people don't understand it. It would have already happened at the last.
People don't understand that it should have happened in between 2016 and 2017.
It was 2016 for sure. It would have happened about a week after the total eclipse. That's 2016, right? No, 2017. 2017. These solar flares usually coincide with full totality eclipses. Mm-hmm. And we again almost didn't make it. Again, certain someone had to change polarity.
Certain someone had to intervene.
Yeah. Well.
And we're not going to name names.
I can tell you one name if you want.
Unless you want to toss a name in the ring.
Well, it was the same cast of characters from the past. It was White Buffalo Calf Woman and the Peacemaker. In the same way, she was given the sacred fire, you know.
Well, she wasn't. They weren't the only ones. I'll just put it that way.
From what I understand, because of the Peacemaker thing, she was given the gavel. Like, if you don't give humanity a failing grade right now, give us a chance. We can prove we can do better, and you'll have the final say so. And she didn't give us in 2017, did not give us a pass. She's really upset with humanity's destruction of water and air and the misuse of this planet. Still is. But this gets into a weird story, but I was on my way home and I became very, very frightened that I had made a horrible mistake. And I contacted Galzu. You know who Galzu is.
I know who Galzu is, yes.
And I pleaded, I have fucked up. We need your help. And
well, that was a smart move.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're still talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how he did it too.
Tiamat had some instructions for me that.
Oh, right on. Thank you.
That were along the same path, and that's why I'm saying you're not working alone, because I know there is a team that she has assembled with the basic instructions are to make sure the rock keeps spinning in space, that there are people on it, and that slavery is eventually gotten rid of sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I wonder,
because the marching orders.
Wouldn't Tiamat?
She's an interesting character, and she has a real nasty temper, so you don't want to piss her off.
Right on. I found the same with, White Buffalo Calf Woman is the Pleiadian incarnation of Gaia, and not to be messed with.
Yeah, I've been dealing with Tiamat since 2016. And so this I've talked about her before. She's a 40-foot long Seneca, which is a dragon, and she's ivory with red eyes, and she's at the stage where she still has tiny feet. Seneca are hatched as Western European type dragons. And as they get older, their body and tail lengthen, but their legs get shorter and shorter until they eventually disappear. And she's old enough, she's almost a snake with wings, but she still has teeny tiny little feet. So,
tell her I said hello.
I will.
There have been the whole dragons. They're all
been,
around me, but I've never experienced them. Like
there have been times when I've been under attack and having trouble sleeping because I was frightened, that she would form a coil around me that made a basket, and that she would put her head over the top like a lid, and she would tell me, "You're safe, go to sleep." So
perfect. You would love, I was approached by this author, and he's written these children books about this little boy who was befriended by a silver dragon. And the dragon teaches them all about the dragon families. And one part really hit me hard. He's like, you know, there are light dragons and dark dragons. And you can't tell which one you're dealing with because they look identical. And
yeah, the color dragon doesn't mean anything.
So the only way you can tell a light dragon from a dark dragon is dark dragons always speak with a forked tongue. That was brilliant. You know, it is a good way to tell who you're dealing with, because the dark side, it's always forked tongue speech. It's nothing direct. It's always, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're always sneaky, and they will present something and you can feel how twisted it is.
Yeah, truly. You know, I like the idea of there's dragons that want to hoard their gold, and if any human tries to get close, you'll be turned to ash. And then there's the dragons that want to help humanity and share their wealth and their knowledge. And I think it's a nice analogy.
I think there are some who consider humanity to be their gold. I think that's probably the closest description to how she feels about us. She has told me that we are her children.
Perfect.
Which is consistent with the anomaly, where that she was the mother of the gods. So.
Wow, man, it's already past 7.
Yeah.
I like talking with you. Time goes by really quick. That's a good sign.
And compressing time. The show that is after us, the woman didn't show up. So if you want to keep talking, we can.
Well, I would like to say, one thing when AR Bordon brought me into the fold, he said, in this course of study, you're going to learn about cosmic harmonious frequencies. He said, you see, to create matter, you need a specific frequency, but not just specific frequency. You need specific frequencies in specific combination. And he said, more than likely, you'll learn about the true Pythagorean scale from which all creation comes from, which is A equals 432. But the next thing, because this was in 2008, I didn't crack this code until this year. That's a long time to start to actually understand what he was communicating. And what it is just because you got your middle A note on a piano tuned properly to A equals 432 hertz, and just so your listeners that are musicians, hertz is a scientific term of how you measure a waveform. If there's like 3 humps in the waveform, well, that's 3 hertz. If there's 100 hertz, it's 100 peaks.
In a certain length of
Second,
a
in a
certain
second.
length of space.
Specific
It's a
per second.
measurement of humps over a specific length of time per second.
Yeah. Yes. So 432 hertz. Just because you have your piano tuned properly, there's still lower A notes called octaves. And but there's also other notes, you know, that's just the A note. What about B and C and D and E? Well, I have a grid that it has all of the grid. I can share this with you. It's actually, I was given it by AR Bordon. It's from Stanford University. And it's the most cosmic harmonious frequencies. And it's truly every note of the musical scale, but over about 5 different octaves of information. So when I was working with NASA, they told me that they've only seen an increase of energy from another dimension through frequencies that resolve to 9.
Yeah.
And he said like 4 plus 3 plus 2 is 9. It's lower octave, 216. 2 plus 1 plus 6 is 9. 108, 9. 54, 9. 27, 9. Well, I looked at the grid of all the musical notes, and every single note, no matter where you're at, all resolve to 9, which blew my mind in the first place. I'm like, oh my God, if you have your guitar tuned properly to 432 hertz, no matter what note and what string and what octave, and anywhere on the fretboard, it's going to bring through more energy. But then it hit me, well, AR said you needed specific frequencies and specific combinations. So how would you know what notes, you know? And then I was given the answer to that. It's truly harmonics. On a guitar neck, there's what's called harmonics that only show up in very specific places along the travel from octave to octave. And so what that means in layman's terms is there's harmonics on a guitar. Guitar players will know what I'm talking about, but on the 5th and 7th fret, you can get these harmonics to pop out, and only in those places, and the 12th fret. So on harmonic vortexes of energy that find the note that falls on top of one. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then the last piece of this puzzle came just recently. I don't know if you've seen this, but mainstream science has just discovered that sound creates negative mass. It's not like when AR said, you know, you're going to find to create mass, you need specific frequencies. This mass isn't positively charged, it's negative mass, which creates negative gravity, creates anti-gravity. And so when these specific frequencies that bring through the most energy, it's that energy is creating an anti-gravity field around whatever that creates normal mass, E equals mc squared mass. When it enters the field of the anti-gravity field created by frequency, that is negative mass, all of a sudden matter falls up instead of down, which now it makes perfect sense with, I'm sure you heard that the pyramids were built using sound and anti-gravity technology. Well, they knew.
Yeah, I'm sitting here going, okay, cool. We're on the same page. Because I was investigating how can you use sound to build the pyramids and other things. There are monks in Asia. I'm not sure which country, so I'm not going to take a wild guess. But
where is the Buddhist?
It's a Buddhist group, monks, that will chant at a specific note, and they are able to raise huge blocks of stone and move them up the mountain.
Yes, indeed.
And that was what got me into it, was reading about that and going, oh shit.
So, that's my next thing is, you know, I've cracked the code and I have a very nice PA system and a nice monitor in my music room. I'm gonna get some shit to float. But before that, the song that I was telling you about that I just collaborated with Dan Reed on is the first song I've written that actually takes these ideas into account. And So imagine,
make sure that I have the link, and I'll add it to the uploads for this.
right on. So I think it's truly one of the first songs ever that, first of all, we know what it does to water, the frequency, and it brings energy. And so by listening to the song, it's going to revitalize all of the water in your body, but it's also going to be creating an anti-gravity field around the listener. And what does that mean? Well, I think it means a lot. Can you imagine even blood flow?
Yeah.
You know, within a negative gravity field, your blood's going to flow a hell of a lot easier. You know, everything in your body will probably function a lot easier and smoother. And all you got to do is listen, you know? So I'm very excited. Like I said, I know what frequencies now to do so. You know, in my music room, I'm going to turn it into a sound laboratory. And I'm going to start with some small stuff and just have the proper frequencies at as loud as I really want it. I got a subwoofer in there that goes down to about 30 hertz. We can only hear down to 20 hertz. That's like, you can just feel it. You can't even hear it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm going to get the proper frequencies going. I'm going to see if I can get maybe a grain of sand to float, to levitate, maybe a feather, and then maybe I'll see if I can get my fat ass to float. It's a work in progress. But then I think of like these ships in space, and maybe that's how they're powered. You got to rock.
The ship that I was in space, we had a repulsing motor engine. We had a copper microwave engine, which they're calling that an EM drive on Earth. And we had plasma drives, which are really super hot engines. And you can flash the plasma out of the engine and use it as shielding on the ship. And then we have something that I'm really not sure how it works because they've blocked that part of my memory. And it's what takes the ship into hyperspace. And it requires a navigator to keep the organics separate from the inorganics, so you don't end up with the Philadelphia experiment every time.
Right on.
That was the problem with the Philadelphia experiment, was they didn't have a navigator. And most navigators are extraterrestrials. There are only a few of us that are human. Or should I say humanish?
Yeah, I met who was the Arcturian ambassador, and he kind of told me the same thing. He said, you know, to power the ship, they would have people that could create Merkaba fields. But he said not too many people could sit in one of those seats that are human right now, because if you lost your shit and like, oh my God, we're traveling too fast, it wouldn't end well for anyone on the ship. That's what he told me.
Yeah. On the ships that I was navigator for, they tended to not tell people how fast we were going or exactly what route we were taking, because humans can't handle it.
That's exactly what I was told.
Even humans out there can't handle it. So they keep you with as few details as possible.
Yeah. Don't look down and don't look out the window.
Well, if you look out the window, you just see everything going really fast. It's streaks. And they just look out and see that and go, oh, we're in hyperspace. Okay. And never think about what hyperspace is.
The only thing I remember truly about being on a ship was some type of art form that was Stargate related, that it looked like let's just say it was a sunset, but then there would be a mirror of a sunset below it. Look like just, like this was a reflection of this, and this look almost like water, the reflection of it in water. And somehow it had something to do with where you're going and how you wanted to enter it. But that's all I know. I don't have a lot of, I am very 3D oriented,
I was on the link a couple of times, and I was always in the area where they have the lime green light.
You're talking about the Link conference aboard Mothership?
The Link Mothership.
Hmm.
I was there a couple of times in 2019. I was a guest, but not entirely voluntary. And it was medical stuff. They were supposed to be fixing things. I was informed I had too much wrong with me, that it was too well documented, that if they fixed everything, that I would end up in a government lab somewhere. And so they fixed what they had to keep me going. But I was in a lime green light area because that killed human bacteria, so that I was not a threat to them.
You know what? I don't, probably too much to get into right now, but the 2011 Link meeting conference aboard the Mothership detailed the work that the team then did in 2012.
Okay, well, this was Nengishizita was apologizing to me for Nanor having put me into the truth machine. So on his behalf, at least he was trying to make it right. So that was, I've had an interesting ongoing relationship with some of the sounds. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I said,
I think of them as people rather than ETs, and definitely not as gods. And they have interesting personalities.
Yeah, that's one misconception, because they don't view themselves as gods. They knew when Galzu showed up, they sat their asses down and listened. They knew they're not the top of the totem pole of galactic intelligence. Yeah. I guess to us, they would seem godlike, but I know they don't. But yeah, meeting the other side of the family can be a little rough ordeal. But I'll tell you what, I just got contacted that dinner is ready.
Well, in that case, thank you for giving us the interview and the extra.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. So. We'll have to do it again, and maybe not a year will pass this time.
So.
All righty. Well, peace. Oh, I keep hitting this. Every time I hit this, like, it sounds like an earthquake going on. I got my microphone right.